What if a wounded creature revealed secrets about Jesus that no religion on earth has ever taught? Secrets that could fundamentally change your beliefs about miracles, healing, and our true cosmic origins. The story I'm about to tell will send a shiver through you in a way that is difficult to explain. So be sure to subscribe to Space Tourist so you don't miss more accounts like this one. Now prepare for a discovery that challenges the very narrative of our spiritual history. Socorro County, New Mexico, August 17, 1996. It was 3:42 in the morning. Sarah Martinez, a paramedic, was driving home after a draining 12-hour shift when she first noticed the lights in her peripheral vision. Her initial thought was that she was just overtired. After 22 years responding to medical emergencies across New Mexico, she was well aware that exhaustion could conjure strange illusions. "I just need a good night's sleep," she muttered, blinking several times to clear her head. But the lights were still there. Sarah pulled her old Ford pickup onto the shoulder of the deserted rural highway and stared through the windshield. Up in the night sky, glowing formations were maneuvering in ways that were clearly not a product of her tired mind. They pulsed with a strange, almost organic quality, as if they were alive. "What in the world is that?" she whispered, her fatigue vanishing completely. The lights traced patterns that defied any logic of flight she understood. They couldn't be helicopters, they were too silent, too agile. They weren't commercial jets, as their movements were far too erratic. And they were definitely not stars or planets. These things were clearly moving with intelligence, with purpose. Sarah watched, mesmerized, as the luminous formations performed a kind of dance across the starry desert canvas. There was something hypnotic in their motion, as if they were attempting to communicate through a kind of celestial choreography. Then one of the larger lights began to falter. It started as a subtle shift in its pattern, but it quickly became obvious that something was terribly wrong. The light pulsed irregularly, its brightness flaring and dimming as if it were battling some kind of critical failure. The paramedic in Sarah surfaced. Whatever that thing was, it was in distress. The failing light began its descent. It wasn't an uncontrolled plummet, but a descent that seemed to be a desperate struggle to maintain control. Sarah could see that whoever or whatever was piloting the craft was fighting to avoid a catastrophic crash. "My God, it's going to crash," she whispered, watching the light vanish behind a rocky bluff about 2 miles ahead. Instantly, her medical training took over. If some kind of aircraft had gone down, there could be survivors in desperate need of medical help. Sarah reached for her portable radio to report the incident, but the speaker just hissed with static. She tried again. The signal was dead. She was alone on this rural road without communication, but acutely aware that if there were survivors, the next few minutes could be critical. Back in 1996, cell phones were still expensive rarities, and Sarah didn't have one. "Damn it," she muttered, her eyes fixed on the spot where the light had vanished. In that moment, Sarah made a decision that would change her life forever. Instead of driving to the nearest town for help, she resolved to see for herself if anyone needed immediate medical care. She always kept a comprehensive first aid kit in her pickup. Maybe she could be the difference between life and death for whoever was on that craft. She turned off the main road, guiding her truck over the rough terrain toward the point where she'd seen the light go down. It took nearly 20 minutes of careful driving along dirt tracks before she came upon a scene that left her utterly stunned. This was no conventional crash site. There was no twisted metal, no smell of spilled fuel, no violent crater carved into the earth, none of the familiar markers of an aviation disaster. Instead, Sarah found a circular clearing where the surrounding vegetation was bent outward in a perfectly uniform pattern, the likes of which she had never encountered in her 22 years of responding to accidents. "What kind of crash does this?" she murmured, cautiously walking the perimeter. And then, in the very center of the circle, her flashlight beam fell upon a figure lying motionless on the ground. Sarah's heart began to pound. The figure was about 6 feet tall, but there was something different about it. Its frame was surprisingly delicate, almost frail. Even in the dim light, its skin appeared to have an unusual quality she couldn't quite place. and its facial features, while vaguely human, were proportioned in a way that was subtly but distinctly abnormal. "This can't be happening," Sarah whispered, but her training quickly overrode her confusion. An injured person was an injured person, no matter what they looked like. She approached cautiously, her professional eyes scanning for vital signs, for breathing patterns, for any evidence of trauma. The being, it was now obvious this was no ordinary human, was unconscious but clearly alive. Its injuries appeared serious but not necessarily fatal. It was as she gently felt for a pulse to check its vitals that something extraordinary occurred. The being's eyes opened. They were large, expressive, and filled with an intelligence that instantly conveyed both vulnerability and a wisdom that seemed more ancient than any human could possess. Then, without any movement of its lips, Sarah heard a clear, soft voice directly inside her mind. "Please do not be afraid. I am hurt, and I need your help. There are important things I must share with you. Things about your species that will change everything you believe you know about your world." The shock of telepathic communication nearly sent Sarah stumbling backward. But there was something in that mental voice, a quality of genuine gentleness and urgency that quelled her initial fear. You're speaking in my mind?" she asked aloud, her own voice trembling slightly. "This is our natural way of communicating," the voice replied with compassionate patience. "I understand this may be unsettling for your people. My name is Zara, and I have come from a very great distance. My vessel malfunctioned, and I require care to recover. But more importantly, there are truths you must know about figures your species holds sacred. Truths that have been lost for millennia." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. Something about the way the being spoke of sacred figures instantly brought an image of Jesus into her thoughts, though she couldn't explain why. "What kind of truths?" she asked, her curiosity now beginning to outweigh her fear. The answer that followed would forever alter her understanding of spirituality, religion, and the true history of humankind. About the one you call Jesus of Nazareth, about who he truly was, where he came from, and why his message of love was far more literal and far more powerful than your species has ever comprehended. Sarah Martinez was not someone who readily accepted unexplained phenomena. Raised in a traditional Catholic family in Albuquerque, she possessed a solid but practical faith, always favoring explanations grounded in science and experience over unquestioning belief in mysteries. At 43, Sarah had earned a reputation as one of the most competent and dependable paramedics in Socorro County. She was known for her calm demeanor under pressure, and for the genuine compassion she showed her patients in their most vulnerable moments. Her journey into emergency medicine had started when she was 21, after she witnessed a severe traffic accident on the highway between Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Sarah was the first to arrive on the scene. Using only the basic first aid skills she'd learned as a Red Cross volunteer, she managed to stabilize 2 critically injured people before professional help arrived. The doctor who took over later told her that her actions had saved at least 1 life, possibly 2. "You have a natural gift for this," Dr. Rodriguez had told her that day. "Have you ever considered a career in emergency medicine?" That conversation set Sarah on a new path. She enrolled in the paramedic program at the University of New Mexico, where she discovered she possessed not only a technical aptitude for emergency medicine, but also an almost preternatural intuition for rapidly assessing conditions and making critical decisions under pressure. Over her 22-year career, Sarah had developed a unique reputation among colleagues and patients. Many noticed that she often seemed to know things about a medical situation that weren't immediately obvious, or would make treatment decisions that, while sometimes unconventional, later proved to be precisely correct. "Sarah has a sixth sense," Dr. Patricia Williams, the medical director of the regional hospital, was known to say. "She can look at a patient and perceive problems our most sophisticated equipment sometimes misses. It's as if she can sense what's wrong before a proper examination even begins." This enhanced medical intuition had saved dozens of lives over the years, but Sarah always attributed her successes to experience and careful observation rather than any special gift. She was a fundamentally skeptical person who needed solid evidence before accepting anything that challenged her scientific understanding of the world. Sarah's personal life had been marked by a string of relationships that ended because of what she called an incompatibility of priorities. Her all-consuming dedication to medicine, where the needs of her patients consistently outweighed social commitments, had made it difficult to sustain lasting relationships. At 43, she lived alone in a small house in the mountains outside Socorro. The property was an inheritance from her grandmother and offered the privacy and tranquility she valued after intense days spent responding to emergencies. Her colleagues often joked that Sarah was married to her work, but the truth was more complex. Sarah had found that helping people in moments of crisis gave her a profound sense of satisfaction that conventional relationships simply couldn't offer. She found her purpose and her identity in the role of a healer, and this commitment had shaped every part of her personality. Spiritually, Sarah had a complicated relationship with the Catholic faith of her upbringing. While she believed in God and attended Mass on occasion, especially for family holidays, her work had given her a more universal perspective on religion. She had been exposed to people of all spiritual traditions and had seen that love, compassion, and healing seemed to transcend any single denomination. When asked about her beliefs, Sarah would often say, "I believe God works through people who are helping other people." She didn't care if you were Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, Muslim, or anything else. As far as she was concerned, if you were healing suffering, you were doing sacred work. This practical philosophy made Sarah popular among patients from all walks of life, who often remarked that they felt genuinely cared for and respected regardless of their personal beliefs or circumstances. There were, however, aspects of Sarah's life that she kept carefully to herself. Since childhood, she had occasionally experienced moments of heightened perception that she couldn't fully explain. During particularly intense medical emergencies, Sarah sometimes felt as if she could perceive not only a patient's physical symptoms, but also their emotional state and even their deeper spiritual needs. "It's just intuition, sharpened by experience," she would tell herself whenever these moments happened. "I'm simply picking up on subtle cues that most people miss." But deep down, Sarah knew her experiences sometimes went beyond purely scientific explanations. There were times during medical procedures when she felt guided by a wisdom that seemed to come from a source outside of her formal training. Treatment decisions would crystallize in her mind with a clarity that felt like knowledge she had never learned. These episodes left her feeling both grateful and uneasy. She was grateful because they often led to better outcomes for her patients, but uneasy because they challenged her scientific understanding of how medical knowledge was supposed to work. In the months leading up to the incident that would change her life, Sarah noticed these moments of expanded intuition were happening more often. She began to wonder if she was experiencing some form of burnout that was affecting her perception, or if she was simply becoming more attuned to the subtle aspects of patient care she had previously overlooked. "Maybe I just need a vacation," she had thought in the week before the encounter that would completely redefine her understanding of reality, healing, and spirituality. It was this unique blend of scientific skepticism and intuitive sensitivity, of professional dedication and spiritual openness, of technical skill and genuine compassion that had prepared Sarah Martinez for the most extraordinary experience of her life. Unknowingly, she had spent decades cultivating the precise character and consciousness needed to respond to an encounter that would challenge everything she thought she knew about medicine, spirituality, and the true purpose of historical figures like Jesus of Nazareth. The decision to take Zara to her isolated mountain home was one of the most difficult Sarah had ever made in her medical career. Every year of her training screamed that a seriously injured patient should be transported immediately to a proper medical facility. But the circumstances were entirely without precedent. How could she possibly explain to an emergency crew that she had found a being in the middle of the desert that was clearly not human? "My house is about 20 minutes from here," Sarah said aloud, still adjusting to the strangeness of a conversation where the replies formed directly in her mind. "It's completely isolated. Can you move, or do I need to carry you?" "I can walk with your help," Zara responded telepathically, her mental voice filled with deep gratitude. "My species is physically more fragile than yours, but we also heal much faster given the right conditions for rest." Sarah helped Zara to stand, surprised by how light the being was despite its height. It was like helping a tall, slender child rather than a full-grown adult. There was an almost ethereal quality to Zara's physical form that made Sarah continually question whether any of this was real. The journey to the house was tense and surreal. Zara remained silent for most of the trip, apparently concentrating all of her energy on just staying conscious. Sarah drove down the familiar rural roads, but everything looked different now, as if the world she knew had been altered by the passenger sitting beside her. "This is really happening," Sarah murmured to herself, maneuvering her pickup along the dirt road that led to her property. "I have a being from another world in my truck." When they finally arrived at Sarah's house, a modest adobe construction her grandmother had built in the 1950s, Zara lifted her head for the first time on the journey and observed the surroundings with genuine interest. "You live alone in this isolated place," Zara commented telepathically. It was not a question, but a statement that seemed to carry a deep understanding of Sarah's character. "I like the privacy," Sarah replied, helping Zara out of the vehicle. "And after what just happened, I think I'll be appreciating it even more." Sarah got Zara settled in the guest room, improvising medical care with the supplies she had on hand. It was a challenge, since she had no idea which human medical procedures would be appropriate for Zara's physiology. But the being guided her telepathically through the basic care required. "My species responds to the same fundamental healing principles as yours," Zara explained as Sarah carefully cleaned the wounds. "Cleanliness, rest, proper nutrition, and above all, a positive emotional environment." During those first hours after bringing Zara home, Sarah oscillated between a state of scientific fascination and surges of panic at the implications of her actions. She was hiding an extraterrestrial being in her house, providing unauthorized medical care and potentially violating dozens of federal laws she didn't even know existed. "You need to understand," Sarah said, glancing at a thermometer that was giving off completely anomalous readings, "that this goes against everything I was trained for. I should be reporting this to the authorities. And if you did that," Zara responded gently, "I would be taken to a facility where I would be studied as a specimen, not cared for as a conscious being. My mission would be jeopardized, and the crucial information I must share with your species would be lost forever." It was at that moment that Sarah asked the question that had been burning in her mind since their very first telepathic contact. "What information? What did you mean about Jesus?" Zara closed her large, expressive eyes for a moment, as if accessing deep memories or preparing to reveal something of immense importance. "Sarah Martinez," the voice finally came, "your species understands very little about the true nature of the one you call Jesus of Nazareth. You see him as an isolated, divine figure, but the reality is much more extraordinary and much more hopeful." Sarah felt her heart race. As someone raised in the Catholic tradition, questions about Jesus touched the very foundation of her beliefs. "What do you mean by that?" "Jesus was not merely human," Zara transmitted, her mental voice filled with a quality of deep reverence. "He was what my civilization calls a starseed. He was a highly evolved soul who voluntarily chose to be born on your planet. He came as part of a coordinated mission to accelerate the spiritual evolution of your species." Sarah felt as if the floor had just dropped out from under her. "You're saying Jesus was an alien?" "Not precisely," Zara corrected patiently. "He was a consciousness that had transcended the limitations of any specific planetary origin. Souls like Jesus exist in higher dimensions, and they can choose to incarnate on any world where their presence might encourage spiritual growth. Over the next few hours, as Zara rested and recovered, she began to share information that challenged everything Sarah thought she knew about Christianity, spirituality, and human history. My civilization has detailed records of the mission of Jesus on your planet, Zara explained. We serve as distant mentors to advanced souls who undertake missions such as his. During his life on Earth, Jesus maintained regular communication with our networks of consciousness. Sarah struggled to process the implications. You're saying that Jesus spoke with aliens? Jesus spoke with evolved consciousnesses that exist beyond planetary limits, Zara clarified. What you interpret as his prayers and meditations were frequently sessions of direct communication with us. He was receiving guidance on how to best serve humanity's spiritual evolution. But the most impactful revelation came when Zara started to explain the true nature of Jesus' miracles. What your people call miracles were not supernatural events that broke the laws of nature, Zara transmitted. They were applications of advanced spiritual technologies that Jesus had mastered through his expanded consciousness. Healing, the multiplication of food, even resurrection, all of these are abilities that any being can learn, provided they achieve the necessary development of consciousness. Sarah felt the very foundations of her worldview begin to fracture. Are you saying that anyone could do what Jesus did? Not immediately, Zara replied, but eventually yes, with the right spiritual development. This was the true message of Jesus. He wasn't meant to be seen as unique and inaccessible, but as an example of the potential that exists within all human consciousness. As the night progressed and Zara continued to recover under Sarah's care, it became clear that this first contact was only the beginning. For the next 3 days, as Zara healed, the extraterrestrial being shared information that completely rewrote the paramedics' understanding of Jesus, of Christianity, and of humanity's real purpose on Earth. Each revelation was more extraordinary than the last, gradually building a picture of reality that was simultaneously more vast and more hopeful than Sarah had ever imagined. Sarah, Zara communicated on the second morning. It is important for you to understand that the mission of Jesus on your planet was not an isolated event. It was part of a much larger program, one that my civilization and other evolved consciousnesses have been coordinating for millennia to help young species in their spiritual evolution. Sarah, who had spent the night awake trying to process the initial revelations, sat on the edge of the bed where Zara was resting. What kind of program? We call it the Star Seed Project, Zara explained, her telepathic communication carrying layers of meaning that Sarah was only just beginning to grasp. Throughout this galaxy, on countless planets, highly evolved consciousnesses voluntarily incarnate during critical periods of a civilization's development. They come to introduce concepts and abilities that can accelerate collective spiritual growth. Sarah then learned that Jesus was only one of many such starseeds sent to Earth over the course of human history. Other figures whom humanity revered as prophets, saints, or exceptional spiritual leaders were often advanced souls taking part in this same program of evolutionary assistance. Buddha, Krishna, some of the prophets you know from various religious traditions, Zara listed. All were conscious participants in coordinated missions to elevate the spiritual potential of your species. Each of them introduced specific aspects of spiritual knowledge that were appropriate for the culture and historical period into which they were born. But Zara explained that the mission of Jesus had been uniquely significant and far more comprehensive than any previous intervention. Jesus was sent during a critical period, Zara revealed. A time when your species was developing the systems of communication and social organization that would allow spiritual teachings to spread globally. His mission was not only to introduce philosophical concepts about love and compassion, but also to provide practical demonstrations of the spiritual capacities that all human consciousness has the potential to develop. The most astounding revelation came when Zara began to explain the true nature of the miracles Jesus had performed. What you call miracles, Zara transmitted, were in fact demonstrations of spiritual technologies. They are based on an advanced understanding of the relationship between consciousness, energy, and physical matter. Jesus mastered principles that allowed for the direct manipulation of energetic systems through focused, conscious intention. Sarah struggled to grasp the implications. So you're saying Jesus used some kind of alien technology? Not technology in the sense of mechanical devices, Zara clarified patiently. Consciousness technology. These are specific methods for focusing intention and energy in a way that produces measurable effects in the physical world. Jesus had developed a mastery of what we call the consciousness-matter interface. Zara explained that through this interface, Jesus could diagnose and heal diseases by directly perceiving the energetic patterns that created either health or illness. He could multiply food by reorganizing molecular structures through focused intention. He could even reverse a recent death by reactivating biological systems through the directed application of consciousness energy. But the most important ability that Jesus demonstrated, Zara continued, was what we call healing through the frequency of love. This is the most powerful spiritual technology that exists in the universe, and it was the true heart of his entire mission. Sarah felt a chill of recognition. What do you mean? When Jesus taught about love, Zara explained, he wasn't just offering moral advice. He was providing precise technical instructions on how to activate the most fundamental healing force in existence. Genuine love generates specific energetic frequencies that automatically align biological systems with the patterns of perfect health. Zara revealed that every evolved consciousness in the cosmos had independently discovered this same fundamental truth. Love was not merely a feeling or a philosophical concept. It was a literal energetic force, capable of reorganizing matter at the molecular level. This is why Jesus placed so much emphasis on loving one another, Zara transmitted. He was teaching humanity how to access a universal medicine, one that can heal any condition, resolve any conflict, and elevate any consciousness to higher states of well-being and clarity. Over the next few days, Zara personally demonstrated these principles. Sarah watched in growing amazement as Zara's wounds healed at an impossible speed whenever she was treated with genuine compassion and loving care. When Sarah was tense or worried, Zara's recovery visibly slowed. When Sarah centered herself in an intention of unconditional love and healing, the process accelerated dramatically. You are witnessing the direct operation of the technology that Jesus mastered, Zara explained during one particularly impressive demonstration, where a significant wound healed visibly in a matter of hours. Your loving presence is activating my own natural healing systems. This is precisely how Jesus performed his healings. Sarah also learned that the mission of Jesus had included laying the groundwork for the eventual revelation of broader truths. Truths about humanity's cosmic origins and its destiny as a galactic species. Jesus knew that the people of his time were not ready to fully grasp the cosmic nature of his mission, Zara revealed. So he focused on establishing the fundamental principles, love, compassion, forgiveness, service, that would prepare human consciousness for the greater revelations that would come in future ages. Zara explained that the current era marked the beginning of the period when humanity was finally ready to understand the more complete truths about Jesus and his mission. This is why beings like me occasionally make direct contact with prepared individuals such as yourself, Zara transmitted. The time has come to restore the complete understanding of the teachings of Jesus and to show that the abilities he demonstrated are natural potentials that any human being can develop. The final revelation concerned Zara's own mission. She and others from her civilization continued to monitor and assist Earth, identifying individuals like Sarah who showed the potential to serve as bridges between advanced spiritual knowledge and conventional human understanding. Your natural compassion and your openness to healing, Zara explained, indicate that you possess latent abilities to channel some of the same energies that Jesus utilized. Part of my mission is to activate these potentials in suitable individuals and to teach them how to use these abilities for the benefit of others. Sarah understood then that her life was about to change in ways she could barely imagine. She was no longer just a paramedic responding to medical emergencies. She was now a student of spiritual technologies that could revolutionize medicine, psychology, and the human understanding of the potential of consciousness itself. Despite the extraordinary things she had witnessed while caring for Zara, Sarah Martinez was hit by growing waves of doubt. An internal resistance began to build, threatening her ability to accept the revelations she was receiving. The implications of what Zara had shared about Jesus were so vast, so revolutionary that Sarah's rational mind desperately searched for an alternative explanation, anything that would allow her to hold on to her previous worldview. This resistance came to a head on the third night. Sarah woke up at 3 a.m, overwhelmed by a sense of panic. Lying in her familiar bed in the house where she had spent so much time as a child, the revelations about Jesus and spiritual technology suddenly seemed not only impossible, but like a threat to her sanity. "My God, what have I done?" she whispered into the darkness, her heart racing with anxiety. "I've brought a completely unknown creature into my house, and I'm believing everything it tells me about Jesus without question." She spent hours obsessively analyzing the past few days, searching for any psychological or medical explanation that could make sense of her experience. Perhaps the stress of 22 years as a paramedic had finally taken its toll. Perhaps she was experiencing elaborate hallucinations brought on by chronic exhaustion and her isolated lifestyle. The telepathic communication, she rationalized, could be a symptom of late-onset schizophrenia, remembering cases she had studied during her medical training. And maybe she was projecting non-human characteristics onto someone who was simply a person with genetic deformities or injuries that had distorted their features. This line of thinking led her to question every detail of her experience. The rapid healing could be explained by an initial misdiagnosis of the injury's severity. The unusual physical appearance could be the result of a rare medical condition she hadn't recognized. Even the circular clearing where she'd found Zara might have a natural explanation she had overlooked in her shock and confusion. The second wave of doubt was even more unsettling. Sarah began to question the religious and spiritual implications of accepting Zara's revelations. As someone raised in the Catholic tradition, the idea that Jesus was not uniquely divine, but part of a larger cosmic program, challenged the very foundation of her faith. "If I accept what Zara is telling me," she thought, her anxiety growing, "does that mean everything I was taught to believe about Jesus is wrong? That the Catholic Church, that the entire Christian tradition is based on an incomplete or distorted understanding of the truth?" The possibility that her core religious beliefs might be inadequate or limited was terrifying, not just intellectually, but on an emotional level as well. Sarah had found comfort and purpose in her faith during difficult times, especially during medical emergencies when she was confronted with human suffering that seemed inexplicable or unjust. "What if I'm being deceived by something that's trying to lead me away from God?" she wondered during a moment of profound spiritual anguish. "What if this is some kind of test of faith and I'm failing it by accepting these heresies about Jesus?" The third wave of resistance was rooted in practical fears about the consequences of her actions. Sarah began to imagine disastrous scenarios that could result from her decision to hide Zara and accept these extraordinary revelations. "If anyone finds out what I'm doing," she fretted, "I'll lose my medical license, my career, my reputation in the community. People will think I've gone insane. The federal authorities could arrest me for hiding evidence of extraterrestrial contact. My entire life could be destroyed." Sarah also feared the long-term implications of developing the spiritual abilities Zara had mentioned. If she really did possess the potential to channel healing energies similar to those Jesus had used, that would bring with it responsibilities and expectations she felt completely unprepared to face. "I'm not a spiritual leader," she thought. "I'm just a paramedic who wants to help people through conventional medicine. I don't want to be responsible for spiritual technologies or for teaching other people about cosmic abilities. This is so much more than I ever asked for. The fourth wave of doubt was perhaps the most fundamental of all. Sarah began to question her own worthiness, her own qualifications to receive such extraordinary revelations. Why would an advanced being from a cosmic civilization choose a 43-year-old paramedic from a small town in New Mexico to share secrets about Jesus and spiritual evolution? Surely there are more qualified people, she reflected with an anguished sense of humility. Brilliant theologians, respected religious leaders, famous scientists who could use this information to help millions. Why me? What's so special about me that would justify this extraordinary contact? This line of thinking led her to wonder if her experiences were simply the product of an inflated ego, a psychological need to feel important. Perhaps her solitary routine life had created an elaborate fantasy where she played a central role in cosmic events. During the lowest point of her doubt, about a week after finding Zara, Sarah seriously considered seeking psychiatric help and even thought about turning Zara over to medical or military authorities. The psychological pressure of safeguarding such extraordinary secrets, combined with her mounting doubts about her own sanity and judgment, became almost unbearable. It was at this critical moment that Zara, sensing the depth of Sarah's emotional turmoil, decided to provide a demonstration, an unequivocal experience that would permanently dispel all doubts about the reality of her revelations. "Sarah," Zara transmitted one morning, perceiving the anguish in her caregiver, "I understand that the information I have shared challenges the very foundation of your beliefs. Your doubts are natural, even healthy, but the time has come for you to experience these truths directly, so that you no longer have to rely on faith alone." What followed was a demonstration that would forever change Sarah's relationship with doubt, with faith, and with her understanding of the true potential of human consciousness. The event that would transform Sarah's perspective began subtly, but it quickly escalated to a scale that defied any attempt at a conventional explanation. It was a Thursday morning, and Sarah was in the kitchen preparing breakfast when Zara appeared, moving with a grace and an energy that stood in stark contrast to the weakness of her first few days. "Sarah," Zara transmitted, her mental voice gentle but firm, "you have been doubting the truth of what I have shared about Jesus and spiritual technology. This is understandable, but now I will demonstrate the principles that Jesus mastered, so that you can personally experience the reality of these abilities." Sarah stopped stirring the eggs she was making and turned to face Zara. "What kind of demonstration?" "First," Zara explained, "I will show you how Jesus diagnosed medical conditions. Come closer and allow me to examine your body's energy, just as Jesus examined those who came to him for healing." Sarah approached, hesitant and still skeptical, but curious to see what Zara would do. The being extended her delicate hands, stopping about 6 inches from Sarah's body. She then began to move her palms slowly along Sarah's torso and limbs, never making physical contact. "You have mild, chronic inflammation in your right knee," Zara announced after a few moments of this scanning. "It is the result of a fall you took when you were 16. There is also accumulated tension in the muscles of your neck and shoulders from work-related stress. And you have a small scar on your small intestine from an appendectomy you had when you were 28. Sarah's heart began to pound. Every one of these observations was completely accurate, yet none of it was information that could be known from a simple visual inspection. "How can you know these things?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I am perceiving the energy patterns in your body just as Jesus did," Zara explained. "Every physical condition creates a distinct energetic signature that can be read by a sufficiently attuned consciousness. This was one of the fundamental abilities that made Jesus such an effective healer. But the demonstration was only just beginning." Zara asked Sarah to bring her a plant that was visibly sick, a fern on the windowsill that had been wilting despite Sarah's regular care. "Now I will demonstrate how Jesus applied healing energy," Zara announced, positioning her hands over the dying plant. Sarah watched, fascinated, as Zara closed her eyes and stood perfectly still for several minutes, apparently concentrating some kind of energy on the fern. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then gradually, Sarah began to notice subtle changes. The wilted leaves started to straighten. The yellowed brown tones were replaced by more vibrant shades of green. New shoots began to emerge in places where the plant had seemed completely dead. "My God," Sarah whispered, witnessing a transformation that should have taken weeks or months happen in a matter of minutes. Directed consciousness energy can accelerate and optimize natural healing processes, Zara explained, opening her eyes. Jesus used these same principles when he healed people, but on a much larger scale, and with a mastery far greater than my own. The third part of the demonstration was even more impressive. Zara asked Sarah to bring her a bowl containing a small amount of water and some raw grains of rice. "Now I will demonstrate the principles Jesus used when he multiplied the loaves and fishes," Zara announced, placing her hands over the bowl. Sarah watched skeptically, expecting some kind of sleight of hand. Instead, she witnessed something that defied her understanding of physics and biology. For about 15 minutes, Zara remained focused on the bowl, and Sarah could literally see, new grains of rice gradually materializing in the water. It wasn't an illusion. It wasn't a trick. Sarah watched as individual grains appeared out of nowhere, slowly growing to full size until they were indistinguishable from the original grains. When the process was over, the bowl contained nearly 3 times the initial amount of rice. "How is this possible?" Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Molecular reorganization through focused conscious intention," Zara explained simply. Jesus mastered this ability at a level that allowed him to create massive quantities of food from minimal resources. He wasn't violating the laws of nature. He was applying principles that your science has not yet discovered. But the most extraordinary demonstration of all came when Zara decided to show Sarah how to activate her own latent healing abilities. She instructed Sarah to place her hands over a small cut on her finger, an injury she'd gotten a few days earlier while cooking. "Now I will guide you through the process that Jesus taught for activating healing energy," Zara transmitted. "Close your eyes and focus only on a feeling of unconditional love, directed toward your own well-being." Sarah followed the instructions. She felt foolish at first, but gradually she entered a state of meditative focus. Zara guided her through specific techniques for breathing, visualization, and emotional intention. "Feel love flowing through your hands," Zara instructed. "Not emotional love, but love as the fundamental energetic force of the universe. Allow this energy to move through you and toward the area that needs healing." For about 10 minutes, Sarah maintained this focus. She slowly began to feel a warm, tingling sensation in her hands. When she finally opened her eyes and looked at the cut, she found that it had healed completely. It wasn't just closed over. There was no sign it had ever been there. I did that?" Sarah asked, examining her finger again and again. "You activated the same principles that Jesus used," Zara confirmed, and in her mental voice, Sarah sensed something akin to parental pride. This ability exists within every human being. The purpose of Jesus was to show that you do not need to rely on external saviors, but can instead forge your own direct connection to the universal forces of healing. The final demonstration was the most profound of all. Zara asked Sarah to bring a photograph of someone who was struggling with their health. Sarah returned with a photo of her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who had been suffering from severe arthritis for years. "Now I will demonstrate how Jesus sent healing across great distances," Zara announced, holding the photograph. "He did not need to be physically present to apply this energy." For the next 20 minutes, Zara concentrated on the photo using techniques similar to the ones she had used with the plant and the rice. When she was finished, she instructed Sarah to check on Mrs. Patterson in a few hours. Later that day, when Sarah went to visit her neighbor, Mrs. Patterson greeted her at the door with an enthusiasm Sarah hadn't seen in years. "Sarah, the most extraordinary thing happened," the elderly woman exclaimed. "My arthritis, it just vanished this morning. For the first time in years, I can move my hands and my knees without any pain. I feel like I'm 20 years old again." When Sarah returned home and told Zara what had happened, the last remnants of her doubt dissolved. The skepticism that had tormented her was gone, replaced by the quiet, unshakable certainty of a truth she had now witnessed with her own eyes. She had witnessed demonstrations that transcended any conventional medical or scientific explanation. Zara's message was now clear. When Jesus performed miracles, he was simply applying technologies of consciousness that any human being could learn. His mission was to demonstrate the potential that exists within the entire human species. With her doubts now completely erased, Sarah was ready to receive the deepest and most transformative revelations of all. Truths about Jesus, his cosmic mission, and humanity's ultimate destiny. 2 days after the demonstration, Zara initiated a communication that was different from the others. It carried a new weight, a new intensity, and it would completely redefine Sarah's understanding of Christianity, spirituality, and Earth's place in the greater cosmos. "Sarah," Zara began, her telepathic voice filled with a solemnity that commanded the paramedics' full attention. "Now that you have directly experienced the reality of the abilities that Jesus mastered, you are ready to understand the deeper truths of his mission and his true identity." The first profound revelation concerned the cosmic origin of the soul that had incarnated as Jesus of Nazareth. "The consciousness you know as Jesus," Zara transmitted, "had evolved far beyond the need for physical experience on any particular planet. She had witnessed undeniable proof of principles that went beyond any conventional science or medicine." As Zara explained with a sense of deep satisfaction, the miracles of Jesus were simply applications of consciousness technologies, abilities that any human being could learn. His true mission was to demonstrate the potential that exists within all of humanity. With her doubts now definitively dispelled, Sarah was prepared to receive the deepest and most transformative revelations of all. 2 days after the demonstrations, Zara initiated a communication that was uniquely intense, sharing information that would completely redefine Sarah's understanding of Jesus, his cosmic mission, and humanity's true destiny. "Sarah," Zara began, her mental voice carrying a solemnity that instantly captured the paramedics' full attention. "Now that you have experienced for yourself the reality of the abilities Jesus mastered, you are ready to understand the deeper truths of his mission and his true identity." The first revelation concerned the cosmic origin of the soul that had incarnated as Jesus of Nazareth. "The consciousness you know as Jesus," Zara transmitted, "had evolved far beyond the need for physical experience on any particular planet. He was what my civilization calls an ascended master, a soul who had completed countless cycles of evolution across different worlds and dimensions. He chose to incarnate on your planet during a critical period of human development. This decision was an extraordinary sacrifice, as it meant temporarily accepting the limitations of a physical body and a linear consciousness, limits he had transcended eons ago. Imagine an adult who voluntarily chooses to return to the mind of a small child, simply to help other children learn and grow," Zara offered by way of analogy. That was the scale of the sacrifice the soul of Jesus made to assist in humanity's spiritual evolution. Next, Sarah learned about the cosmic network that had supported Jesus throughout his entire mission on Earth. "He was never alone," Zara revealed. "He maintained constant telepathic communication with what you might call a cosmic council, an assembly of evolved consciousnesses from many civilizations, all coordinating to provide spiritual assistance to developing worlds." Sarah now understood that many of Jesus's prayers and periods of meditation were in fact sessions of direct communication with these cosmic mentors. He was receiving guidance on how to navigate the challenges of his mission and how to adapt advanced spiritual teachings for a limited human understanding. When Jesus withdrew to the mountains or the desert to pray, Zara explained, he was often participating in interdimensional conferences, consulting on strategies for elevating human consciousness without causing a cultural shock that might hinder spiritual progress. The third profound revelation concerned the true nature of the resurrection and what it implied about human understanding of life and death. "What you call the resurrection," Zara transmitted, was a controlled demonstration of the principles that govern the relationship between consciousness and physical form. Jesus did not die in the way that humans understand death. He temporarily withdrew his consciousness from his physical body and then reintegrated it in order to demonstrate that mortality is an illusion. Sarah understood that this event had been carefully planned. It was meant to establish a conceptual foundation for truths that humanity would one day discover about the continuity of consciousness beyond physical existence. Jesus knew that the people of his era were not ready to fully understand that consciousness is eternal, and that physical death is merely a transition, Zara explained. So he provided a dramatic demonstration that planted conceptual seeds that would blossom into a more complete understanding in the ages to come. The fourth profound revelation related to the true meaning of Jesus' teachings about love and its application as a universal spiritual technology. When Jesus taught to love one another as I have loved you, Zara revealed, he was giving precise technical instructions for activating the most powerful force in the universe. Love, as Jesus understood it, is not an emotion or a feeling. It is the fundamental energetic frequency that holds all of creation in harmony. Sarah learned that evolved civilizations throughout the cosmos had all independently discovered this same fundamental truth. Conscious love generates energy fields that automatically promote healing, growth, and evolution in any system to which they are applied. This is why the very presence of Jesus was so transformative, Zara explained. He constantly operated from this frequency of universal love, creating a healing field around him that benefited anyone who came near. The fifth profound revelation concerned the continuing mission that had been established through the work of Jesus and how it was unfolding in the present day. Jesus established what you might call a spiritual network around the earth, Zara transmitted. Through his teachings and the example of his life, he created an energetic template. This template was designed to facilitate an accelerated spiritual awakening in future ages, when humanity would be more prepared for the complete truth. Sarah now understood that this spiritual network was being activated through individuals like herself, people who demonstrated a capacity to integrate advanced spiritual knowledge with practical service to humanity. You are living in the period that Jesus anticipated, the period for which he laid the foundation, Zara revealed. The current era is the time when the teachings he planted like seeds will finally blossom into a complete understanding of human spiritual potential. The sixth profound revelation concerned the specific role that Sarah and others like her were meant to play in continuing the mission of Jesus. Jesus introduced concepts, Zara explained, but he could not demonstrate their complete application because of the cultural limitations of his time. Now, individuals like you are being chosen to demonstrate the practical applications of the principles he taught, showing how spiritual technologies can be integrated with modern scientific knowledge. Sarah understood that her entire life, her medical career, her natural gift for healing, her spiritual openness, had all prepared her for this. She was meant to serve as a bridge between the ancient teachings of Jesus and the contemporary application of consciousness technology. The seventh and most extraordinary revelation of all was about the future, about the events that would determine whether the mission of Jesus would achieve its ultimate success, or whether humanity would lose this critical evolutionary opportunity. The next 2 decades are crucial, Zara transmitted, and Sarah could feel a palpable urgency in the message. During this period, a critical mass of human beings must awaken to the spiritual abilities that Jesus demonstrated. If that threshold is reached, humanity will make a successful transition into a galactic civilization. If not, the current opportunity will be lost and the process must be restarted in a future cycle. Through the telepathic transmission, Sarah was shown glimpses of 2 possible futures. In one, humanity embraced its spiritual potential and joined the cosmic community of evolved civilizations. In the other, fear and resistance led to stagnation, forcing the evolutionary process to begin again in the distant future. The final and deepest revelation of all was about the fundamental nature of reality and the place of human consciousness within the cosmos. The entire universe, Zara transmitted, is a multidimensional school designed to accelerate the evolution of consciousness through the experience of apparent separation and limitation. Jesus was a visiting teacher to this school, coming from the higher levels to assist those students who were ready for graduation. Sarah now understood that all physical existence was temporary. The true purpose of life was to develop the qualities of consciousness needed to transcend material limitations and participate in the realities of higher dimensions. When Jesus said, "You are gods," Zara concluded, he was revealing a literal truth about the potential that exists within all human consciousness. His mission was to awaken humanity to its own latent divinity. When these extraordinary revelations finally ended, Sarah Martinez was no longer an ordinary paramedic who had found a wounded extraterrestrial being. She had become a guardian of cosmic truths that could transform human understanding of Jesus, spirituality, and humanity's true destiny as an evolved galactic species. With the profound revelations about Jesus and his cosmic mission completely integrated into her consciousness, Sarah Martinez underwent an internal transformation. It fundamentally redefined not only her personal identity and medical career, but her understanding of the purpose of human existence and her responsibility as a bearer of the spiritual technologies that Jesus had introduced 2,000 years before. The first and most significant transformation occurred in her perception of medicine and healing. Before Zara's revelation, Sarah had viewed her work as a paramedic through a purely scientific lens, diagnosing symptoms, applying medical protocols, and transporting patients to appropriate facilities. Now she understood that true healing operated on levels much deeper than conventional physical interventions. "I'm not just a paramedic," Sarah reflected during one of her first emergency calls after Zara's demonstrations. "I'm a facilitator of healing processes that include but also transcend conventional medicine. Each call is an opportunity to apply the principles that Jesus mastered." This new perspective completely transformed her approach to her work. Sarah began to subtly weave the energy healing techniques she had learned from Zara into her standard medical procedures. While checking vital signs or administering first aid, she would also direct a focused healing intention through her hands, creating an energy field meant to accelerate the body's natural recovery. The effects were extraordinary. The patients Sarah treated showed consistently faster recoveries and fewer complications after treatment. Many also reported an inexplicable sense of peace and well-being, both during and after her care. "There's something special about the way paramedic Martinez works," commented Dr. Stevens, the hospital's medical director, after noticing a pattern of exceptionally positive outcomes. "Patients she treats arrive at the hospital in more stable emotional states, and often with better prognoses than we would expect based on their initial injuries." The second major transformation involved her perception. She found that her senses had expanded beyond conventional medical diagnosis. Sarah discovered she could now perceive not just the physical symptoms of an illness, but the underlying energy patterns that were causing or sustaining it. In her personal journal, she described the experience. "I can see where the energy is blocked or misaligned. It's like having X-ray vision that reveals not just physical structures, but the energy flows that either maintain health or create disease." This expanded perception allowed her to frequently identify medical problems before they fully manifested as physical symptoms. She could also discover the underlying causes of conditions that had baffled other medical professionals. The third transformation was the development of a natural, continuous connection to the spiritual network Zara had described as the legacy of Jesus. Sarah found she could now access guidance and knowledge from sources that went far beyond her formal medical training. "It's like having a team of spiritual consultants available during every emergency," she reflected. "When I'm faced with a complex medical situation, I can tune into a wisdom that always knows exactly which interventions will be most effective." This connection also gave her access to specific healing techniques that seemed to be transmitted directly into her mind as different situations required them. Sarah began to use methods she had never formally studied, but that consistently produced exceptional results. The fourth major transformation was in her intuitive understanding of the spiritual and emotional states of the people around her. Sarah began to perceive not only physical conditions but also the deeper healing needs that extended into the psychological and spiritual dimensions of a person's life. She came to understand that each person carries wounds that go far beyond their physical symptoms. Part of my work now, she realized, is to offer healing for aspects of their lives that conventional medicine doesn't even recognize. This expanded perception transformed her patient interactions. What were once functional medical transactions became deeply healing encounters that often touched on the more fundamental aspects of a person's well-being and life purpose. The fifth transformation was the development of a natural ability to inspire a spiritual awakening in her colleagues. Without ever trying to teach or convert anyone, Sarah discovered that her transformed presence was often enough to prompt others to question the limitations of conventional medicine and to open themselves up to expanded possibilities. "There's something about working with Sarah that makes me question everything I thought I knew about medicine," commented Jennifer Walsh, a nurse who had begun working regularly with Sarah. "She never talks about anything spiritual or alternative, but just being next to her during an emergency opens me up to possibilities I had never considered before." The sixth transformation was the development of a cosmic perspective that allowed her to see individual medical cases as part of much larger evolutionary patterns. Sarah came to understand that each emergency, each patient, each healing situation was an opportunity for the spiritual network established by Jesus to express itself through her. "I'm not just helping individuals," she reflected. "I'm participating in a larger process, one where the spiritual technologies introduced by Jesus are being reintegrated into human society through their practical application in modern medicine." This expanded perspective gave her work a sense of sacred purpose that went far beyond conventional professional satisfaction. The seventh transformation was in the development of a deep understanding of how to integrate advanced spiritual knowledge with effective practical action in the conventional world. Sarah learned to operate simultaneously as a competent medical professional within the established system, and as a channel for healing abilities that transcended standard medical protocols. The key, she realized, is never to contradict or challenge conventional medicine, but simply to add other dimensions of healing that complement and amplify established treatments. This approach allowed her to integrate spiritual technologies into her practice without creating conflict with colleagues or supervisors. She demonstrated that it was possible to honor both medical science and the healing principles that Jesus had taught. The eighth and most profound transformation of all was the development of a direct personal connection to the consciousness of Jesus, one that transcended all religious denominations and theological dogmas. Sarah discovered she could communicate telepathically with the same consciousness that had incarnated as Jesus, receiving direct guidance on how to apply his teachings in a modern medical context. Jesus is not limited by history or geography, she understood with deep admiration. His consciousness remains active and available to anyone who genuinely desires to continue his work of healing and spiritual elevation. This direct connection gave Sarah a sense of sacred partnership that transformed each day on the job into a conscious collaboration with the spiritual forces that had been operating throughout human history to facilitate the evolution of consciousness. All of these transformations combined to make Sarah Martinez a unique presence in the medical community. She was a professional who operated with exceptional technical skill, while also channeling healing abilities that directly echoed the methods Jesus had used 2,000 years earlier. She had truly become a bridge between modern medicine and ancient spiritual technologies, demonstrating that it was possible to honor both science and spirituality in service to human healing. With these profound internal changes now deeply consolidated, Sarah Martinez had developed a revolutionary understanding of reality, one that completely redefined her perception of medicine, of spirituality, of the true mission of Jesus, and of humanity's role in the greater cosmos. This new perspective was not merely theoretical. It was a lived, practical reality that influenced every part of her existence, preparing her to serve as a bearer of spiritual technologies in an era of planetary awakening. The first part of her new understanding concerned the true nature of medicine and its evolutionary future. Sarah now saw that conventional medicine, while valuable, represented only a fraction of what was possible. She understood that a new era would begin when the spiritual principles demonstrated by Jesus were fully integrated with modern scientific knowledge. During one of her morning meditations, she reflected that medicine was evolving toward the rediscovery of truths that Jesus had known perfectly. She foresaw an era where energy diagnosis, vibrational healing, and consciousness therapy would be recognized as legitimate and essential parts of medical care. Sarah could glimpse a near future in which hospitals would have rooms for healing meditation. She saw doctors trained to perceive energy, not just physical anatomy, and a system where a patient's emotional and spiritual state would be considered as important as their physical symptoms. The second part of her new understanding involved a transformed view of miracles and their relevance to modern medicine. Sarah now understood that the instantaneous healings performed by Jesus were not unique, supernatural events. They were demonstrations of natural principles that any healthcare professional could learn to apply. The miracles of Jesus, she realized, were simply medicine operating in its most advanced form. When he healed instantly, he was applying a knowledge of the relationship between consciousness, energy, and matter that our science is only just beginning to rediscover. This perspective completely transformed her approach to impossible medical cases. Instead of accepting the limitations of a prognosis, Sarah began to see each situation as an opportunity to apply more advanced healing principles, ones that could transcend conventional medical expectations. The third part of her new understanding related to the true nature of spirituality and its relationship to physical health. Sarah discovered that spirituality was not a separate category from medicine, but the most fundamental dimension of all healing. The separation between medicine and spirituality, she understood, is artificial and counterproductive. Jesus never made this distinction, because he operated from the understanding that true healing always involves the integration of body, mind, and spirit. This realization allowed her to develop treatment approaches that simultaneously addressed physical symptoms and deeper spiritual needs. This often resulted in healings that went far beyond what could be expected from physical interventions alone. The fourth aspect of her new understanding redefined the role of healthcare professionals in society. Sarah came to see doctors, nurses, and paramedics not just as technicians applying scientific protocols, but as modern facilitators of the same type of healing work that Jesus had performed. Every person who chooses a career in healing, Sarah reflected, is unconsciously responding to the same calling that led Jesus to focus his mission on alleviating human suffering. We are all spiritual heirs to his work, regardless of our specific religious beliefs. This perspective transformed her interactions with medical colleagues, inspiring many of them to question their own reasons for entering the field and to explore a deeper sense of purpose in their work. The fifth aspect of her new understanding related to the nature of disease and its function in the human evolutionary process. Sarah came to understand that many health conditions were not simply random biological failures, but were opportunities for consciousness to grow and for spiritual awakenings to occur. Disease frequently serves as a catalyst for personal transformations that wouldn't occur otherwise, Sarah perceived. When we approach medical conditions only as problems to be eliminated, we miss opportunities to facilitate the deeper growth that the experience of illness can offer. This understanding didn't diminish her commitment to alleviating physical suffering, but it added a richer dimension to her work. She could now help patients find meaning and growth through their experience of illness. The sixth aspect of her new understanding involved a deep perception of divine timing. and how to recognize when specific situations presented an opportunity to apply more advanced spiritual technologies. Sarah learned to distinguish between cases where conventional medicine was the right approach and situations where energetic interventions could produce more extraordinary results. "There are moments," Sarah described, "when I can feel that higher presences are working through a medical situation. In those moments, I know I can channel healing abilities that go beyond my normal training and produce results that surprise even me." The seventh aspect of her new understanding related to the nature of death and how that knowledge could transform medical care in terminal situations. Sarah came to see death not as a medical failure, but as a natural transition that could be facilitated with love and dignity. Jesus demonstrated that consciousness transcends physical death, Sarah understood. When I cannot heal the physical body, I can still offer healing for the deeper aspects of the person that will continue on beyond this current life. This perspective allowed her to offer a unique kind of comfort and assistance to patients and families facing the end of life, often facilitating transition experiences that were deeply peaceful and transformative. The eighth aspect of her new understanding involved seeing how the revelations she had received related to larger changes occurring in global human consciousness. Sarah perceived that she was not alone in developing these expanded abilities, but was part of a worldwide network of individuals who were rediscovering spiritual technologies. "We are living in an era of spiritual rediscovery," she understood. "All across the planet, people are developing abilities similar to those that Jesus demonstrated. It's as if the spiritual network he established is finally being activated on a massive scale." The ninth aspect of her new understanding related to the specific role she would play in continuing the mission of Jesus and how to prepare others to develop similar abilities. Sarah understood that her function was not to keep this knowledge a secret, but to demonstrate through her own example how spiritual technologies could be integrated with conventional medical services. "My responsibility," she realized, "is to live these principles so consistently that others are naturally inspired to explore these possibilities for themselves. Real change comes from practical demonstration, not from theory." The 10th and most profound aspect of her new understanding centered on the fundamental nature of love as a universal healing force, a force destined to transform all of human medicine in the decades to come. Sarah now understood with absolute clarity that love was not simply an emotion or a spiritual concept. It was the most advanced medical technology in existence, an energetic force capable of reorganizing physical matter, accelerating healing, and elevating consciousness, all at the same time. Jesus, she knew, had come to teach humanity how to use it. With all these insights integrated, Sarah Martinez had developed a philosophy of life and medical practice that honored both scientific competence and spiritual wisdom. She demonstrated that it was possible to be a highly effective medical professional while channeling healing principles that directly echoed the methods Jesus had used to transform lives 2,000 years before. Zara fully recovered. A new ship arrived from her civilization, and she returned to the stars. In the month that followed her departure, Sarah Martinez discovered that her own life had been transformed in ways that were still unfolding, day by day. The revelations about Jesus and the spiritual technology she had learned did not remain abstract concepts. They became practical tools that revolutionized her work as a paramedic and amplified her ability to facilitate profound healing in everyone she met. The most noticeable changes were in the results Sarah was achieving during medical emergencies. Her colleagues began to observe a pattern. Patients she treated demonstrated extraordinarily rapid recoveries, suffered fewer complications, and often reported a sense of deep peace, even in the midst of traumatic situations. Eventually, Dr. Stevens, the medical director of the regional hospital, called her in for a private conversation. "Sarah, I need to ask you about your methods," he began, his tone one of genuine curiosity. "Your success rates are consistently higher than anything we have on record. The patients you bring in arrive here in better condition than should be possible, given the severity of their initial injuries. What are you doing differently?" Sarah had prepared herself for this moment. Dr. Stevens, I've discovered that when I treat patients with genuine compassion and a focused healing intention, in addition to our standard medical protocols, it seems to activate their own natural healing processes and accelerate their recovery. It's as if profound, compassionate care creates an environment that facilitates healing. Interesting, Dr. Stevens responded, clearly intrigued. Is there a scientific basis for this? Emerging research in fields like psychoneuroimmunology suggests that positive emotional states can significantly influence the healing process, Sarah explained carefully. I'm simply applying those principles more consciously and consistently. This conversation led to an invitation for Sarah to conduct workshops on compassionate medicine for other healthcare professionals in the region. Without ever mentioning her experience with Zara or the specific revelations about Jesus, Sarah began teaching her colleagues techniques they could use to improve outcomes by integrating focused healing intention with their technical skills. The secret, she would explain during these workshops, is understanding that true healing always involves more than just physical interventions. When we treat patients as complete beings, body, mind, and spirit, we activate the healing abilities they naturally possess. The results were extraordinary. The medical professionals who implemented Sarah's techniques reported not only better patient outcomes but also a greater sense of personal satisfaction and purpose in their work. Many began to question the limitations of a purely mechanical approach to medicine and started to explore the deeper dimensions of healing. Sarah Martinez is starting a quiet revolution in how we think about medicine, commented Dr. Patricia Williams after observing the changes in her own practice. She's reminding us that we are healers, not just technicians, and that distinction makes all the difference in the world. But perhaps the most significant impact of Sarah's work was on ordinary people, who began to understand that the ability to heal was not reserved for medical professionals alone. Through her example and a few subtle words, many people discovered they could facilitate healing in their own families and communities simply by consciously applying love and compassionate intention. I learned from Sarah that we all have the capacity to help others heal, wrote Maria Santos, one of Sarah's neighbors, in a letter that went viral on local social media. Not through complex medical procedures, but through the quality of our love and attention. It's as if the very act of genuinely caring for someone activates healing forces that are always present, just waiting to be awakened. In the 2 years that followed her encounter with Zara, Sarah continued to receive guidance through occasional telepathic communications, not just from Zara, but from other evolved consciousnesses as well, including the one who had incarnated as Jesus. These communications always emphasized that she was part of a global awakening, a time when spiritual technologies were being reintroduced into human society through practical application. One day, Sarah received a communication she recognized as coming from the consciousness of Jesus himself. You are demonstrating exactly what I intended when I showed humanity that the ability to heal is the birthright of every conscious soul. Continue to show through your example that love is the most powerful medicine in existence. Now, more than 3 years after her transformative encounter, Sarah Martinez is one of the most respected voices in integrative medicine in the Southwest. Her characteristically humble yet effective approach has inspired hundreds of healthcare professionals to expand their own practices beyond purely technical limitations. But perhaps her most important legacy is demonstrating that ordinary people can develop and apply extraordinary healing abilities once they understand that love is not just a feeling, but a real energetic force capable of facilitating profound transformations. For those of you hearing this story, you are living in an era when the discoveries of Sarah Martinez and others like her are rapidly changing our understanding of human potential and the nature of healing. If you have ever felt that there is more to healing than conventional medicine recognizes, if you have ever experienced moments where your loving presence seemed to help someone feel better in inexplicable ways, then Sarah's experience offers confirmation that your intuitions are correct. The central message that emerges from Sarah's extraordinary journey is at once simple and revolutionary. The healing abilities that Jesus demonstrated were not unique to him. They were examples of the potential that exists within every human consciousness when it operates from the frequency of unconditional love. If you work in a healing profession, medicine, nursing, therapy, or any field dedicated to alleviating human suffering, Sarah's story suggests that you may be called to rediscover deeper dimensions of your work, dimensions that transcend conventional technical protocols. The spiritual technologies that Jesus introduced are not abstract religious concepts. They are practical principles that can be applied by anyone willing to approach healing from a place of genuine love and compassionate intention. Your own preparation for understanding and applying these principles can begin simply by developing a greater awareness of the energetic quality you bring to your interactions with others. Remember that Jesus chose to demonstrate his most important teachings through acts of healing because he knew that love applied practically to relieve suffering is the purest expression of an advanced spirituality. When you care for someone with genuine love, you are channeling the very same force that Jesus used to perform his miracles. The transformation of Sarah Martinez from a competent paramedic into a healing facilitator who unites modern medicine with ancient spiritual technologies shows that it is possible to honor both science and spirituality in the service of alleviating human suffering. The evolved beings who communicated with Sarah continue to observe and assist the Earth. They are identifying individuals who show the potential to serve as modern channels for the same healing principles that Jesus introduced. If you feel drawn to healing work in any form, this may be a sign that you too are being gently called to explore abilities that transcend conventional limitations. Jesus did not come to be worshipped as a distant, inaccessible figure, but to demonstrate the possibilities that exist within every human soul. When he said, "These things that I do, you shall do also, and greater still," he was offering a literal promise about the potential that each person possesses to facilitate healing and transformation. You are living in an era of rediscovery, a time when the teachings of Jesus about love as a healing force are being validated through practical applications that integrate ancient wisdom with modern scientific knowledge. The only question that remains is this: are you ready to explore your own capacity to serve as a channel for the kind of love that Jesus demonstrated is the most powerful medicine in the universe? And you, who have just heard this extraordinary story about the true abilities that Jesus came to teach, have you ever had an experience where your loving presence seemed to bring healing to someone else? Have you ever felt that you possess the potential to help people in ways that transcend conventional explanations? Share your own experiences with moments of inexplicable healing in the comments below. You may discover that you carry more of this capacity than you ever imagined. If this story of the cosmic revelations about Jesus resonated with something deep inside you, subscribe to Space Tourist and activate notifications so you won't miss other narratives that explore the spiritual truths being rediscovered in our time. And please, share this video with people who work in healing, or with anyone you feel is ready to understand that the abilities of Jesus are natural human potentials just waiting to be developed. Remember, in a universe where love is literally the most advanced medical technology that exists, the only limits on the healing you can facilitate are the limits you choose to accept on your own potential to be a channel for that universal force.